All right, folks, it's 2 o'clock. We're live, so we'll go ahead and get started. I don't know if you've ever done a presentation with me or gone to one with me before. I like to tell a lot of stories, so I'm going to tell a lot of stories. To start, I'm glad there's people here. It's the last session of the day. I once got the worst slot of death at a conference ever. And it was a 3-day conference held in Las Vegas. So you already know where this is going. And the last presentation slots were on a Saturday at 9 a.m. So just imagine if you went to a conference in Las Vegas. You planned to be there all day Thursday, all day Friday, and you were leaving Saturday. You're probably not going to make it to a 10 a.m. thing. So I remember just standing there, like going through my slides, thinking like, wow, I did a great job making those. And, so anyways, I'm glad folks are here. You're catching me at my typical nap time. I'm not going to lie. So I've told some of you know, and I've told some of you, today is Thursday, yeah? So if today is Thursday, my daughter is 5 weeks old. Thank you, yeah. 2 to 5 is when I sleep in the afternoon. It's a very weird living, and I can feel it right now. So interact with me. If I start to doze off, just say something like, hey, Matt. So what we're all here for today is we're going to talk about creating an inclusive post-secondary education program. Inclusion, we typically talk about at birth to 22 when we're in those K-12 schools. I'm here to tell you that we can actually carry it on even further. There are different inclusion models that we can use, but California has been kind of a black hole for these types of programs. We're getting better, but we're going to talk about kind of some of the barriers, some of the work we're trying to do here locally at San Jose State, and I'm going to ask for some help if I can get it. I know I've got some of my local transition post-secondary folks, so I might reach out to you and ask for some help. So I'm Dr. Matt Love. I'm going to be leading it. Unfortunately, my colleague, Dr. Ji-Hoon Lee, is not going to be able to join us, but I will give her credit and props. She is really championing this work and leading it. To give you an overview of what I want to talk about today and let you know who I am. So prior to coming to San Jose, it was January 2015. One of my instructors in my PhD program basically came to me and said, hey, would you like to be a graduate assistant and work on campus full-time with me? You'll have to leave your job in the classroom, but you'll be on campus. If you want to be a professor, it's great for you. Gave me no other details, and I said, yeah, that sounds great. Show up to my first day of work after the winter holiday and said, okay, what's the project that we're working on? And he said, well, you and I are going to be the team that brings the first student with Down syndrome to the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and we're going to enroll him in fully inclusive college courses. So he's going to take English 101, Psych 101, government, political science 101, right? And I thought, all right, so I'll be like a case manager. And he was like, no, I want this student to receive as close to an authentic college experience as possible. And I said, okay, great. And then he said, but in addition to that, by the next semester, I want us to expand to 6 students, then 12 students. And I was like, okay, I'm one person. Let's do this. And I can tell you, I was worried. Other people that I told, hey, we're coming to your courses. We're worried. And they had some doubts, right? But what I can tell you is in the 3 years that I worked with that project and in the years since, so I still kind of collaborate with a lot of my friends who are leading that program now, how much of a difference we've made in the lives of the students who are participating, in the community, and just in the transition trajectories overall. So going in, I was super worried. And then I started digging in and realized, oh, at the time there was about 200 of these programs. We're 7 years later, there's closer to 300. But if you look, not very many of them are in California. Yes, California has inclusive post-secondary education programs, but if you consider the size of our state, the amount of students with intellectual and developmental disabilities that we serve in our pre-K-12 system, we are underrepresented in the number of programs that exist, right? And I was telling Susan earlier, what many people don't know is California was the first state to actually have one of these programs. So inclusive post-secondary education programs really began proliferating in the mid-2000s, 2010 especially, when we highlight the Higher Education Opportunity Act, which created pathways for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities and entry into college. So if we think about how you get into college, you've got your high school diploma, you got your SAT, your ACT. Many of our students with autism and intellectual disabilities don't take that, and it's a barrier. It prevents them from getting into college. But what the Higher Education Opportunity Act provided was a different pathway for students to enroll in college and to enroll in post-secondary ed. Typically in credential or certificate-seeking programs. And another thing a lot of people don't know is it also made those students Pell Grant eligible. So beyond just inviting anyone that could afford to go to college, students with intellectual and developmental disabilities are able to be awarded Pell Grants to come to college. And a lot, in those 13 years, an additional 100 programs have popped up, but really only 3 have popped up in California, despite the fact that Taft College was the first place to do this all the way back in the 1970s. So if you think about, Genevieve, I see your face like, wow, yeah. So the programs proliferated and popped up in 2010, but California had the first one in the 1970s, but we've kind of stalled since. So fortunately, I'm working with a group, the Inclusive College Alliance, that wants to highlight the roles of inclusive post-secondary education programs for inclusive efforts at large. Just in the last couple weeks, I've been in K-3 classrooms, middle school classrooms, and some high school classrooms that have said, we're having a really difficult time getting our students embedded and included in our general education programs. And fortunately, I'm able to say, yes, it might be challenging, but if we could do it at the university level in political science, math 101, why can't we do it in algebra 9 or, So that's something that we want to do with our work in this presentation. We're looking for community partners, inclusive champions. You can't start these programs without resources and people. People cost money. There is a tremendous infrastructure to support students with disabilities going to college. But because we haven't been doing that work with our students with ID, autism, and other developmental disabilities, sometimes it's hard to find those partners that are willing to open up those purse strings for you. We'll talk about other projects forming across California. So I know this is a statewide conference. When you go back to your district, we want you to know and be able to share out with your transition partners, with your transition coordinators, with your high school teachers writing those transition plans. College is an option for all students. While the options might be limited in California right now, not all students stay in state to go to college. Not all students with intellectual disabilities or autism stay in state to go to college. There are 300 programs across the country where financial aid, work study, and vocational opportunities are available for students. We want to make them available here in San Jose, in the Bay Area, and across California, and we're working on it. And then, again, I'm calling out for help, so I'll highlight an area where you can help us with some advocacy. We are trying our best to get California itself to invest in these programs. Currently, there are programs known as TPSIDs. They are transition programs for students with intellectual disabilities, where the Department of Education will invest about $2.5 million to start a program. And that's how a lot of these have started, but not very many programs in California. Fortunately, in California, we have a tremendous amount of resources. Our goal is to get legislators to invest those resources in our kiddos with ID and autism. And I just want to talk about, if we think about that UDL mantra, we help the students with the most diverse needs. Inherently, we're going to help the students with any need, right? A rising tide raises all ships. How do we do that in post-secondary education? So, as you couldn't tell, I haven't talked to adults in a while, so I might dominate the conversation. If you have a question, stop me. It's great, right? Like, I don't have to use parentese anymore, using my adult voice. So if you have a question, raise your hand. If I don't see it, talk over me. My feelings won't get hurt. Sherry, if there's one that pops up in the chat, again, you know me well enough to say, Matt, stop talking. I have a question, and I'll try and answer it. I also want you chose to come here for a reason. You saw the title, you saw my name, you saw something. You wanted to get something out of this presentation. If by the end you don't get that thing that you want, ask me. I can probably answer or help you get what you want. So essentially set a goal for the presentation and get what you came for. And be comfortable, right? If you brought a drink, a snack, it won't offend me if you eat it. So be comfortable, ask questions, get what you came for. Those are my norms, and you won't hurt my feelings. All right, so why? If we look at outcome data for students with intellectual disabilities and autism, they are the worst of the worst. When we think of employment opportunities, independent living opportunities, and just community engagement, even when compared to other students with disabilities, it's unfortunate that students with ID and autism just don't realize positive post-school outcomes. But what we've noticed is, in a lot of these post-secondary education programs, we're changing those outcomes, right? I can speak anecdotally and I can point to the research. I know several students that I started working with in 2015. I am jealous of their lives. They work 32 hours a week, play video games all the time. They've got their own apartment. And they always invite me to go golfing when I'm in town. And I'm like, how? So, that's the life I think all of us want. Students with ID and autism can realize those. And if we think about why anyone goes to college, it's to live that better life, right? We're talking about college affordability, the purpose of college, like what's the purpose of post-secondary education on the broader level in society. We know it's important. We know that's why we send our children. That's why we went. How do we make this available to students with ID and autism? And if we think, 300 programs nationwide, I think 10% of the population of the United States lives in the state of California. Of those 300, 18 are in California. However, 5 are at four-year universities. So the traditional PSEs that we're talking about that lead to certifications and support students, only 5. And only 2 have sustainable funding through a TIPSID grant. So that number could go down. How do we change that? That's what we're working for, right? We want to make it affordable for students, and we want to make these programs sustainable. So when I think of the California landscape, how do we get it to where our students can live independently, can work one job in a competitive and integrated space? Who are my Bay Area folks? Who lives locally? Yeah, so a lot of us know the challenges young adults might be facing with housing, let alone young adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We also know that the available competitive integrated employment, meaning forward-facing work where you're interacting with other adults, you're delivering customer service, you're interacting with your coworkers, a lot of that is specialized, right? You need additional training to know how to do that. And our students with ID and autism aren't precluded from receiving that additional training. Again, what I know anecdotally is I've helped students learn to code, and they received a certification from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas to do that. One student got a culinary certification. Another student works in an inclusive preschool environment. And what we found out was many employers locally in Las Vegas at the time, and many employers here, are open-minded. They say, I would love to hire someone with autism. I would love to hire someone with an intellectual disability. But I don't know. Like, I've never worked with those people, right? If we think about in school, in the community, we shelter this population away. They're not necessarily fully integrated, right? So even employers are like, I want to, but I don't know what that looks like. It was maybe not unexpected, but we said, hey, what if we told you this kid has gone to UNLV, they went to a 2-year program, and they got a certificate in, one of our kids young adults, got a certification in kinesiology. Hey, can he work at your gym? Yeah, if he's got a certification in kinesiology that's sponsored by the university, I'll put him in a 32-hour-a-week job, no problem. That piece of paper from a university matters. Same thing with the young lady who works at an inclusive preschool, and same thing with the young man who now writes some of the code to slowly drain our bank accounts because he codes for slot machines. He lives in Las Vegas. So if don't play them. They're a trap. Take it from someone who lived in Las Vegas for a long time. What's cool about California is we have a wonderful post-secondary landscape. But if we talk about inclusive post-secondary opportunities, we are definitely lacking when we compare ourselves nationally. And if we compare ourselves on the K-12 least restrictive environment rates, we rank pretty low. So what I'm hoping we can do with some of this work in expanding post-secondary opportunities for students with disabilities is expand inclusive opportunities for students in general, right? Again, my argument's always been, if we can do it at the university, we can do it in high school, we can do it in middle school, we can do it in elementary school. And if we're doing it in all of those things, it's an easy pathway where we hold high expectations for all students throughout their lives. Again, we've talked about the evidence that supports this. A lot of this is there. The data is important, but I think we've all shared that we know this population achieves negative post-school outcomes. And just like any other student population, post-secondary education can help. So that's the goal, right? Letting an employer, letting someone else know that they have a post-secondary credential certification is something that we want to provide. But beyond the academic portion, right? Inclusion is not just someone who has a butt in a seat learning academic content, right? None of us, I don't know, maybe some of you did. None of us went to college for the learning, I'll just ask, right? Like, all right, well, good for some of you guys, right? I went to get my degrees, but I also went for the football games, the social opportunities, and then later the social mobility, right? For this student population, we want those same opportunities. We want them to go to a football game, grab lunch with a friend. My biggest goal was the kids were always trying to hang out with me in the program, and I would just kick them out of my office. I would say, leave, you've got a whole university to go explore, go have lunch with other people. And then some of the scarier things, I guess, the thing that even I was hesitant to do. Again, I haven't sent a child off to kindergarten yet, but the closest thing I've come to it is dropping off our first cohort, 9 p.m. on move-in day. All right, you guys live in the dorms now. Go for it. But here's my phone number, here's poison control, all that good stuff, right? But we gave them those opportunities. So that's why I know when those graduates left UNLV, they got their own apartments. I knew, hey, you're going to be okay. You lived in a dorm for 2 years. Now you're just living by yourself in an apartment with some people checking on you. So if we think about what post-secondary education offers all students, it's the opportunity to be an adult for the first time, right? Academic, social, and then you get that residential experience that we want to provide for students. It's getting up at 7 a.m. to go to your class. It's getting up at 7 a.m. to go to your work study without another adult, doing it for you all the time. What we want to do as well is if there is a college program for a student with intellectual disability and autism. We want parents to know about it today. Again, my daughter, 5 weeks old. First question I asked my tax guy is, how do I save for college for her? If you're told your child has intellectual disabilities and autism in our current climate, do you think many parents think, and it's a sad fact, I encourage them to do so, but do you think many parents who have a child with ID or autism put money away for college? Yes, ma'am.
Well, yes, no. And I have a child who's 17 who has an IEP.
Mhm.
The problem is that he's turning 18 and any assets are becoming a huge liability to us as we're looking at his disability.
Right.
So that's where I'm caught in having to shuffle all of this stuff and basically hide everything. It's really complicated, and I'm in the know, as a special education teacher. This is what I do, and it does get complicated. So we want to, but if anything is tied to his name, anything more than $2,000, he loses his disability.
Right. And same thing goes with when we did the employment. So the reason the one student I was talking about only works 32 hours and not 40 is because it does come into play with his insurance and additional benefits and income. So a side part of that too, right, is you, just like any other parent, you want 18 years to plan for some of these things. We also want to advocate for more flexibility in terms of assets, because we don't want students to lose out on opportunities because of those things, where they otherwise might be qualified for. But that's what we want to do, is we want to change the narrative. Too many times, and I hope you have a different lived experience than what I'm about to describe, but too many, oh, Arizona.
Yeah.
It's near and dear to my heart. I live there.
The preposition was from.
Yeah.
There. I mean, that's why I'm trying to learn the system, because
Right.
he's still in Arizona.
So let's chat.
I think it's terrible things that they do.
What part of Arizona?
Outside of Phoenix, Gilbert.
Okay. Project Focus at the U of A, wonderful program. Let's talk after. Okay, okay. But what we want to do is change the narrative, because too many times it's, hey, your child has ID, or hey, your child has autism. Let's think about our expectations. Let's think about long term. Too many times parents told me that's what they heard, and I don't think that we need to do that. It's, what are your dreams? What are your child's dreams? How do we get there? If college is an aspiration, which it's not for all children, I want everyone to go to college, but I've had plenty of 18-year-olds with autism come to me and say, yeah, my mom really wants me to do this, but I'm good. And I'm like, well, then maybe this isn't a fit right now. So thinking about how we help each of those families come to a long-term plan and support them along the way. Let's not lower our expectations just because we put an educational diagnosis on you. Again, I also talked about providing a top-down view of inclusion. If we can do it in post-secondary education, we can do it K-12, pre-K-12. I want to provide new pathways and options during transition. I was chatting with a couple of you beforehand that were saying, parents ask me, where can my kids go when they graduate? There are wonderful vocational options. There are wonderful employment transition services. But if you wanted to continue your education in California, your options are limited. We want to create new pathways. Creating that culture of high expectations at birth from the start. I think opportunities for translational research, if you have a program at on a college campus, professors like myself are going to want to do research, but that research can be helpful, right? Here's how we do inclusion. Here's how you can translate that to different environments. Here's how you can provide and create new and, hopefully innovative programs. And then, like I said, rising tides raise all boats. If you hear anything about college enrollment now, what you hear about college enrollment is we have a more diverse student population. We have more first-generation students. We have more students who are becoming acclimated and adjusting to the culture shock of a university. If we are developing a system that is inclusive, welcoming, and supportive of students with intellectual disabilities and autism, we provide that robust system of supports, but we don't make that system of support inclusive to them. Again, it goes back to that idea of universal design. A support that's in place for one student can be supportive of all students who demonstrate learner variability. So that's what we want to do, is create a system of support at the university level that is targeted for this student population, but is supportive of any and all students. Sherry, do I have any questions? Am I good? Okay. Moving on, picking up steam, folks. I'm getting over that nap time lull. So what does it look like? We want it to look like any other student's college experience, right? So if I think about mine, I took courses, I worked at Safeway, I engaged in social activities with my peers on and off campus, and I participated in campus events, right? Went to football games, went to homecoming. There's no reason that students who are enrolled, whether they are in a program or not, should not have that same college experience. And again, it's for that post-secondary age group, right? Students can come to us at 18, 22, 26. You know, we like to keep it under 28, but post-secondary age students, right? There's no typical college student. When I look at the courses that I teach, there are people that are in their teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. So we want it to mirror the traditional college population. These programs can be 2 or 4 years long. Again, if you're looking to earn a credential or a certificate, typically we have a 2-year program. But in a 4-year program, we'll add that residential component, we'll add additional vocational opportunities, and we'll try and find ways for you to earn additional credentials and certifications from the university. So the way they typically run is you have a general core of courses. Just like any other college student, we want you to take those courses that are going to help you be well-rounded. The midterms are coming up, right, election-wise. Because of that, I always had my students take political science. I want you to be civically engaged. I want you to be engaged in your community. That's the purpose of taking political science. That's a general core course that any student takes. Personal finance courses, there are way smarter people that can help you balance your checkbook, make smart investments at a university than I could. I taught a transition program at a high school. I could teach my students to budget. Did I know anything about putting money away? I was 20, 21 years old when I taught my first, teaching placement. My strategy was, if you've got it, spend it, kids. I did not teach that, but that was my life experience. So we want those general core courses that are going to help our students be well-rounded. If you think about a university is a mini city that exists on a couple city blocks, right? There are jobs, work study. Some of the students had job internships that I was jealous of. That kiddo that we placed that ended up getting a full-time job at a gym got to be the equipment manager for the spring football team. He went home with like the coolest Nike gear that was branded. I think he got a helmet after, and I was like, man, how do I do that? And they got to work for a bunch of cool different things on campus. Another worked for our College of Ed. That's how she got a job placement in that preschool. So there's a lot of opportunities on a college campus. Let's tap into those. And then supervised internships. Again, I can help place you into a job, but a college is home to so many experts in so many different fields that they can offer you supervised internships that just lend that credibility to you seeking employment afterwards. That's what we want to build in and around California and at the project we're proposing at San Jose State. And everything is based on person-centered planning, right? We're going to give you that general core set of courses, but we also want to provide the job track, supervised internships, and additional courses in that area that you're interested in, right? So we're all going to take political science. We're all going to take English 101. But if you're interested in nutrition, then you're going to take some nutrition courses. If you're interested in child care, child development, you'll take those courses with support from our program. And so just like anything else, a program's got to have a flow chart, right? So you'll see there's got to be a project director because there's a ton of paperwork. If we want our students to be Pell Grant eligible, if we want to keep our program accredited, that's what that person does. And then below the coordinators, though, you have an academic and a career development coordinator. We recruit, at least when we're in Las Vegas, and our plan here in San Jose is to recruit graduate assistant students on campus to not only be academic and vocational support, but I'm not as young as I used to be. I'm not as cool as, I was 23 when I started at the UNLV program. And, so I was a natural support, but I'm an old person with a kid now, so I can't be the cool person that the students would hang out with. But our coordinators, our coaches, our mentors, and our interns can, right? So they're that natural embedded social peer support. And that's something that I think is important pre-K through 12 as well, right? When I work with co-teachers, when I work with inclusive programs, my number one suggestion always is, how can you embed peer-assisted learning strategies? How can you have peer-to-peer contact? Same thing at the university, we just call your job something a little bit different. Why do I cover the structure? Hopefully you go back and you say, hey, I think this would be really cool. How can I start an inclusive post-secondary education program with the university that's close to me? How can I help advocate for that? How can I share what one might look like? And there's a bunch of different models that have varying levels of red tape associated with them. You have a standalone inclusive post-secondary ed program. So this is the San Jose State program. And, the standalone programs can be different as well. They can be fully inclusive. Your students take the same courses that any student would take. They can be hybrid, where you have program-specific courses and general courses that the university offers that everyone takes. Or, my least favorite, are the segregated programs where, you're housed on campus, but your students only interact with other students in the program. It's not necessarily a fully integrated model. Then you have dual enrollment. Not sure if any exist in California, but I know nationally there are options for students with ID and autism to be enrolled in their high school at their district while also attending vocational and academic coursework at the university. Just like any other student who's going to SJSU while still in high school does, programs like that exist for this population. But for the few people that I know that run those nationally, I don't know, have you ever worked in a group project? Now imagine that group is a school district and a university. There's a lot of negotiation that needs to go on there. And things get tough. And then other programs are, you have those 18 to 22 job placement programs for students that have aged out of academic services, but they're in a transition program at their district. They will use the university as a place for job training and job placement only, so the students don't necessarily take courses, but they're at the university working some jobs around. Again, that's what our peer support would look like. Everything needs to have a structure, but these would be the same age college students, right? We would recruit graduate assistants, and typically, college always has that free labor force, whether it's student teachers or human service interns that need to do 12 hours of community service a week as part of their program. We say, hey, do you want to join the coolest opportunity? It's on campus, and you can do 12 hours in 2 days if you want. So trying to recruit those same age peers and using that supervision as training kind of as that research that we can disseminate to our K-12 partners. Again, everything I just said. Same age peers, and we want to get as much volunteer workforce as we can and help students develop authentic relationships with other students on campus. The thing that we're really looking forward to is figuring out how we navigate the California systems of support, right? So you have the Department of Rehab and the regional centers that provide support. Written into law, these centers and DOR provide tuition assistance, job coaching, peer mentor supports, instructional devices. There's funding there for them, but navigating that is very, very difficult. So if anyone has like a friend, a buddy at VR or DOR and wants to help us out, let us know. We're looking for people, right? And it's just because it's new. Many of the students that we target, that we're trying to recruit, have cases with DOR, but they're like, well, I don't know that we're going to pay or we're going to do tuition matching for them. We're like, but why not? So if you want to help us out with that, that's really what we're seeking. And we're just looking for people to be inclusive champions with us, right? We're trying to pass legislation, but we're also just trying to start programs. That's what we did at UNLV. We just kind of said like, hey, we're here on campus, help us figure it out because we're not going anywhere. Not the nicest approach to take, but it's effective. And we're looking for partners and collaborators. Those are some opportunities on campus partners. If you've done community-based instruction, you need community partners for placements, for supports. As much as Ji-Hyun and I want to be the end-all, be-all, do everything for this transition program, we recognize that that's not possible. And then, we have off-campus partners as well. And what we're hoping this is just the next step of, the history of inclusion. It's happening nationwide. Like I said, there's close to 300 programs. I want there to be more in California. We, are hoping we get one started at San Jose State, but San Jose State can't service the entire state of California. And if we think about inclusion, go all the way back to 1974 when we first passed EAHCA. It was parents saying, I want my students to go to school. From that, it was parents saying, I want my students included in the same classes and in the same work as their peers. 15 years later, as that first cohort starts graduating from school after they'd been given access, we had the Americans with Disabilities Act. I want my community to be more inclusive of me, right? ADA benefits all of us. 18 years after ADA, we have the Higher Education Opportunity Act that's saying, I want access for all students to be able to go to college. Here we are 13 years later. We still have parents, we still have families, we still have students themselves saying, I want to go to college in California. And I guess we're at that critical tipping point. How do we get California to invest in this population? How do we take that next step for inclusion, building on the history that we've already established? So that's what we're hoping our next steps are. And again, we're looking for ways to disseminate this work. We're looking for community partners. So if this is something that strikes you or is something that you want to work on, if you're a transition personnel person, we're happy to work with you. And if you want to, there is our contact information. And I think if you go to Instagram right now, I think they're building out Facebook and Twitter. If you follow at Inclusive College Alliance, it'll talk about the work that we're doing. So Ji-Hyun and I aren't alone. We have partners at UC Davis, CSU Long Beach, all up and down California. And I'm hoping these materials are posted on our conference page, but if not, please feel free to take pictures or ask me to send them to you, and I can do that. All right, how did I do on time? Dang, I crushed it. Maybe too fast. So, yikes. Any questions, thoughts, comments? Yes, ma'am.
So, have you talked to the people who run YLAP? It's the Youth Leadership Forum. It's run through the Department of Rehabilitation for students in high school to be leaders in the disability community. They go to Sacramento for a week, 5 days, 6 days. It's all free. They learn about all the different opportunities there are, and they meet with legislators to lobby legislators. They choose some issue, they meet with legislators to for the issues that they think are important, and that would be an issue that they could certainly bring to legislators, and having it come from people with disabilities rather than just from academics could have an impact, maybe.
I agree with you. So have we done that? No. And I think that, as we think about the history of inclusion and the next steps, that is the next step, I think, for all inclusive work, because it has typically been parents, academics, and researchers. The ADA was unique, so the Americans with Disabilities Act was unique in that people with disabilities themselves did a huge part of the advocacy. But I agree with you that it is well beyond time that students with disabilities and individuals with disabilities are included in that advocacy as well. Yeah. So that is an avenue that is new and will be pursued by me.
My son volunteers for them. He attended, and he has been a counselor now for 2 years, and will probably work again this year. And he knows people who we could get you in contact with if you're interested in them.
That's why I'm here, is because I don't know everything.
Have you talked to the people at Silicon Valley, the California Independent Living?
Emails are out.
And who? At the California, who have you,
Yeah, so me, not very many people. I am more of the, here's what's done nationally, how do we translate that to California? Like I said, we have a wonderful group at CSU Long Beach, San Francisco State, all working on and coordinating this because we're a large state. Again, I'm talking about what we hope to do at San Jose State, but there are 23 CSUs, more than a dozen UCs, I believe, and even if we could capture half of those, I think we could have a nice representation of, opportunities across the state. But no, I mean, those are two. One follow-up and just another door that we're going to keep knocking on for sure.
I know people at both, so I could.
Yeah, please. I know you have my email, so. Yeah. Other questions, comments, recommendations, that's what I'm here for, folks. Yes, ma'am.
You keep mentioning San Jose State. Where would you say you are in the process of potentially launching that?
Yeah, so our goal is to have our pilot students in the spring. That said, spring is very, very close. So fall 23-24 is like this is happening date for us anyway. So I know you have a college age student.
Only a junior though.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
I have another year.
we'll have our lives figured out by then. So you've I've got time. So what I will say, okay, hold on. So here's the strategy I use in my college courses. My presentation is done. If you do not have any questions, it will not hurt my feelings if you get up and leave. If you'd like to listen to others' questions, please feel free to stay. And if not, the day is yours, but I'm here to answer questions. So I know you've got a bevy of questions. Does anyone else have? Sure. Yeah.
What does the high school transcript need to look like in order for them to be eligible for these programs?
Yeah, so for these programs, nothing. They just need to be ready to go to college. And that's what the Higher Education Opportunity Act did, was they said that you don't need, and I know a lot of states are moving away from this, but the language was essentially you don't need a standard diploma. If you have an adjusted diploma, there is a pathway for you to enter. The problem is each university, even in California, is different, right? Because we rely on essentially programs, we just need to find ways to code students so that they can be enrolled for a variety of red tape purposes. So a transcript does not need to look like anything. What I can say is our plan mirrors the plan of many programs nationally in that we have an application process, and that application process doesn't necessarily consider the type of diploma that you have. It's really do you want to come to college? Do we have the supports in place to support you? And, is this a best fit? Like, is this what you want, right? So it's unfortunate that we can't take, and no program can take each and every student. But yeah, so in terms of a college or a high school transcript, any type of diploma works. Under the Higher Education Opportunity Act, each program has their own application process that ultimately leads to a person-centered plan upon admission. Yeah.
So I have a handful of people who would be interested in this right now.
Okay.
How would they apply?
Well, we are working on figuring out how to get our students coded. So in addition to looking for champions off-site, we're working with the folks on-site at SJSU to help kind of break down some of the barriers. So send along their contact info because interested parties help. That's how we got started at UNLV, right? It was a parent and a family that said, my child is going to college. I know that they have the right to. And we kind of just said, they're here. We were fortunate at UNLV that the Office of Continuing Education said, yeah, we've got an enrollment pathway for them. They're enrolled. They're a continuing education student. And that gave them opportunities to use the gym, use any student-based facility, free football tickets, all of that stuff. And that's our goal, is figuring out how do we get those students coded so that they get the same benefits and opportunities as other students. So if you've got interested folks, send them our way because they can be our other champions that we need, right? We also need to demonstrate, look, we've got a need. There's a demand for this. Help us meet it. And that's something that has surprised us along the way, right? Like all of our universities, colleges, and it's something that everyone that I've talked to that started one of these programs, right? If you look at the mission of any university, like the word inclusion is in there, right? But everyone I've ever talked to that started one of these programs has said, it doesn't feel really inclusive when I'm trying to bring these kids on campus. And, I get that there's concern, but I don't know, like let's live that inclusive mission that we're talking about at our universities, and let's just show them that other people are striving for that as well. So please send me their names, and I don't know, I'm going to be emailing you a lot, Susan. Yeah. Yes.
So I work for Santa Clara County Office of Ed, and we have post-secondary
Mhm.
programs. And a lot of our districts in Santa Clara County have post-secondary.
Absolutely.
So, like, what about opportunities to have like our students come like for swimming lessons or other
Yeah.
activities where maybe like they enroll in a course but they have like
Yeah, so-
cooperation between like their special day class
Absolutely.
they're hosting and
So for that,
to San Jose State.
Ji Hyun is your person. So she is in the Department of Adaptive Physical Education. She does that stuff
So my
all
husband
day.
actually is at APD and he
Okay.
works with post-secondary here and she was one of his former
Nice.
student, or he was one of her former students. But yeah, it's like using them together, like our program.
Yeah, for sure. So, oh man, why is her last name escaping me? I text her all the time. Kathy Wall, former Inclusion Collaborative. So in 2019, this was December, we had conversations, right? Like we got a whole team together and we're like, hey, how do we do this? And the plan was to put together a team in the beginning of 2020. I think our first meeting was supposed to be like March 15th, 2020. And yeah, I was having lunch with Sung Park right down the street planning for it. And then he goes, hey, Matt, I just got an email that the world's shutting down. I don't think we're going to hold that meeting. So I would love for there to be dual enrollment or just like collaborative opportunities. So please reach out to us. Like, it's just getting people to say yes to stuff. And I don't know, I can be annoying and just wait to get, yeah. So let's figure that out. I know Ji-Hyun does stuff like that. So we can, and that like, that's a foot in the door.
Swim, 'cause I know like there was going to be like a Sammy swim program.
Yeah, I mean, so
Start?
for 2 years, there was a huge amount of construction right outside of my office window that drove me crazy. But now I get to see a sweet pool. Like there's a really, yeah. So we have the facilities. In terms of the programs, I'm not as aware because I know Jihoon's are a huge part of those. So email us and we'll figure it out. That's the other thing is like we'll figure stuff out. We'll make it happen. Yeah. So sorry that I don't have a solid answer, but I know we do those things. I know that she has inclusive opportunities in her APE program. I think she was running one as recently as a couple weeks ago. So that's definitely something we can do. What's that? I believe so. I'm not 100% sure. That's why I wish she was here, but extenuating circumstances. But yeah, we definitely do partner and collaborate. Even if it's like you said, let's start with an opportunity to participate in an event. Let's move towards maybe we do some job placements because you can do 1,000 different things on a university campus. Work a bit 100%, right? And then anything we can do to make them paid internships for those students as well, I think is something that I want to explore. So partners, like the more people we have to work with and the more people we have asking and demonstrating that need, just go that much further for us. Thanks. Do you want to go through more of your questions?
I'll keep the ones that I think are probably.
Okay. Okay, and we can chat after if you'd like.
Yeah. So what makes them eligible, Pell Grant eligible? Because I know generally that's tied to income. Is it separate than that? Because like I know my other older children weren't eligible for Pell Grant because of my income.
Right.
Well, is he different because he's 18, but I'm taking guardianship? So how does that all?
Yeah. So one thing that we did at UNLV was we also held sessions with family lawyers because we were right next to the Boyd School of Law. And they would kind of walk through those guardianship considerations. So I'm sorry that I'm not an expert in those things, but what I can tell you is if you're exploring programs and you want to see if your child would be eligible for a Pell Grant, the question you want to ask that program is, are you a certified transition program according to the government? So they'll refer to it as CTP. So I would just say, do you have your CTP certification? So in order to be recognized by the government and to receive financial aid or work study, you need to submit an application. It takes about 6 months to process, maybe longer because, the government. I love the government, though. Like, I say that, but the government serves such an important function. Ask if they're CTP certified because that's how they're recognized as being financial aid eligible. So CTP, and I'm sorry that I don't have the income question. Sorry.
I know that changes things, and I don't know if I want to give up guardianship for scholarship because the guardianship covers. I mean, that's a difficult decision to make as we guide parents through that decision because oftentimes they're going to take guardianship. Like I know I take guardianship of him in 6
Right.
months. Most of our kiddos.
And we had those conversations. We said, here's what comes with guardianship, and here's, I'm not going to discuss his grades with you if you're not his guardian because of FERPA. I'm not going to let you make these decisions because of FERPA and all of these. However, if you are the guardian, here are the thing, So a conversation that you want to have with any program that your child's going to enroll in, and, depending on your own situation. But because most people I would say all people that run these programs are experts or have a lot of experience with the student population, they're going to be familiar with guardianship concerns, not guardianship concerns. I'm just not a full expert on the financial aid side of it. Sorry. Yeah. Don't feel like you have to do all the homework yourself, though. One resource I will direct you to, it's called Think College. So if you go to thinkcollege.org, that is the coordinating center for all post-secondary ed programs in the United States. There's FAQs, all sorts of stuff that you can go to. Other questions, folks?
I have one more.
Sure.
Just thinking of the financial aid. So in California, community college,
Mhm.
the first 2 years are free.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that has some enrollment caveats, though. Um, so because I don't work and I'm not planning to have the community college aspect to it, what I know of it, and I could be wrong, so that's my disclaimer. I think that is for traditionally enrolled students, unfortunately. So the adjusted diploma enrollment, I don't think qualifies for free tuition.
I'm
I,
wondering if that's a way.
oh, we brought it up. Yeah. So I'll be honest about some of the challenges we're facing. The group spoke to legislators last year. But the world and the purse strings have been really like stressed in the last couple years. And then everyone is really concerned about what the economic outlook looks like for the next couple years, whether state revenues and stuff is going to go down. So what we're trying to do is show how we can make these programs sustainable without costing the state of California hundreds of millions or $1 billion over 5 or 10 years. What I will say is, what the Department of Ed has done is over 5 years, they'll invest $2.5 million in a single program, and that program has to demonstrate a plan for sustainability. And so that's what we're trying to demonstrate to the state is here's our plan for sustainability so that we are not a long-term investment. That said, there are huge long-term investments in higher education in California, which I think we would be like a fraction of a decimal percent. I hope there's not a math person in the room because that made no sense. But we would be just a tiny portion of a larger budget. So we're just trying to say, like, in our inclusion efforts, let's not forget this student population. Let's invest in them as well. Because long term, it's an upfront investment that I think pays for itself over time. I know I'm kind of short. See, I finished super early, but I think questions are always the best. Running low on time, so I want to make sure that I don't leave anyone behind with questions. There are no bad questions. Okay. So I'm going to say thanks, everyone. I know, it's always fun ending a conference. I know there's some ending events, so I'll let you get to those. And I hope everyone has a happy, healthy, and wonderful weekend once they get to it.